My name is Whitaker. I'm the creative director of a company called Scratch. We are local to the Philadelphia area. Just in case there's any Kansas City fans in the audience, I will just say the Eagles did win the Super Bowl. Go Birds. I am happy to move on from that. We can now move forward. Okay, so Scratch, what do we do? So we live, oh man, my man. We live at the intersection of agency and production company. We sit right there in the middle. And what does that mean? That means we are creatively greedy. So we like to do everything. We like to do the creative, we like to write the script, we like to do the pitch, we like to write everything up front, but then we also like to take our ideas and go all the way through the production process, regardless of medium. Whether it's 3D, 2D, live action, VFX, we don't really care. We just love to tell stories by putting pixels on screen. And that's what we really, really love to do. Personally, I've also been an adjunct professor. I taught at Drexel University for 12 years. I did curriculum development at Wilmington University, bringing Maxon Cinema 4D into the college and writing curriculum and a program for that. Also taught at lynda.com, when it was called lynda.com, before I had gray hair. So I've been around the block a couple times, and I keep coming back because I really, really love this stuff. It's my second time here presenting for Maxon. That's me 20 pounds ago and before gray hair. And before I start these presentations, I just like to thank Maxon, and not in some like cheesy, oh thanks Maxon, but they are so instrumental in giving me this career. And I don't mean just with all the tools, but it's the community. It's so welcoming. The kindness and the warmth and generosity, it feels like a big family. And I'm just so grateful to Maxon. I just want to make sure they know that when I'm up here representing them. So thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm extremely grateful. Today's presentation is about making something out of nothing, which I'm going to get to in a second. But this is really the key takeaway that I want everyone to take from the presentation. If you only take one thing, it's that the Eagles won the Super Bowl. The second thing would be that the toolkit inside of cinema, it's the versatile tool set, enables us to make something out of anything. So whatever you can think up in your head, and as creatives, sometimes that can be, a little all over the place. With a little time, you can figure out how to do it in cinema. If you can't do it yourself, we have a humongous community of people that will gladly jump in and help you figure it out. Okay? What do I mean by make something out of nothing? How many people, show of hands, work for clients? That's the majority of you. Okay. So we were asked to create content. And stick with me on this, all right? We were asked to make content from a meeting led by a few federal organizations on the topic of geographic information systems. Is everyone just so excited for that? Yeah, right. I didn't think so. And the assignment was, hey, we have this meeting, and it's going to be a bunch of people sitting around a desk with laptops talking about geographic information systems. Go make something cool out of that. Right, I just wanted to pause for effect, look at your faces, right? How in the world could you make that exciting, right? I still don't know, which is why I'm going to show you what we did instead. But that is kind of why Scratch exists, is to take things that other people are like, I don't really know how you can make this cool. We love that challenge of taking something that seems really difficult to bring to life, or a real abstract concept, and make something out of it. We love that stuff. So we turned that meeting into this. That was our solution to cover that meeting, to cover that event. Okay? And I'll just show you a quick version of it here.
Every year, thousands of natural, man-made, and technological disasters impact communities across our nation with devastating consequences to survivors, businesses, critical infrastructure, and the environment. Communities spend years and millions of dollars to rebuild and recover. The DHS Science and Technology Directorate and the National Alliance for Public Safety GIS Foundation are helping public safety leaders focus on policy solutions and mitigation tactics using Geographic Information System, GIS technology, and spatial analysis. Together, we're convening stakeholders at events like the Innovation Summit for Preparedness and Resilience, or INSPIRE, to strengthen our infrastructure, systems, and communities.
INSPIRE is a culminating event for the strategic partnership between DHS, FEMA, and the National Alliance for Public Safety, GIS, and S&T. It encapsulates developing better practice and policy, developing better technology solutions. And the third area is to develop the next generation of first responders and emergency management professionals.
We need to understand how you make things better in terms of reducing impact. GIS is the starting point for building that capacity to analyze spatial data, visualize the outcome of that analysis, and communicate it to different stakeholders.
Human beings understand things better with a story. Using GIS to kind of target, here's the things that we see, and here's the history of it, and here's the impacts, and being able to put that in some sort of storyboard or to help people then understand it, helps people manage the risks. What I'm doing is using the GIS technology to help us tell the story, to create the motivation for people to want to create more of a risk management culture within the departments.
You're going to see a rapid and accelerating pace of innovation. Innovation in the ability to capture more data, to understand the risk, to understand how a phenomenon or event is evolving and forming, to allow you more response time, to allow you to take more effective protective measures, which ultimately means you're starting to develop more robust, richer analytic capabilities around geospatial technology.
All right, so at Scratch, our process always starts with the conversation, okay, what are we doing? And I would imagine all of you have a similar sort of step in your process where you go, all right, we know what the brief is, but what are we going to do with the brief? Is that how most people work? You kind of try to figure something out like that? What we're trying to figure out here is, what's the hook? What's the device? What's the gimmick? You can think about your favorite song. You don't remember like the random part of the song, you remember the chorus, right? The thing that gets stuck in your head, that you keep singing over and over, that melody that gets stuck in your head. That's what we try to do, but we try to do it visually. We're trying to make visual hooks. So how are we going to do that? Step 2 in our process, and I'm using process very loosely, is we try to figure out what the low-hanging fruit option is going to be, and then run as fast and as far away from that as we can. For this project, we determined that was going to be footage-based. So talking heads, some stock footage, maybe some B-roll. I can see everyone just totally glazing over when I say that. You're like, don't do that, that's a terrible idea. We thought so too. And there's nothing wrong with that approach, but giving the opportunity to do something a bit more unique, a bit more creative, not only is it more fun, but we really believe that gets clients better ROI, more eyeballs on their content, which at the end of the day is why we have a job, right? We are working for the client to get them, the biggest bang for their buck, right? And we thought our approach would do that better than some talking heads. Step 3. I know I'm probably showing my age with this joke, reference, but that's all right. And reference is king. If you don't have a target, if you don't know what you're aiming for, it's almost impossible to hit it. You're just kind of guessing the whole time and hoping that you eventually land somewhere. We do not like to do that. We love reference. And here's where we landed with our reference research. I will be completely honest, to this day, I am still not 100% clear what GIS does, but that's okay, I don't have to, because we're looking for patterns, we're looking for ideas, we're looking for, cough, cough, things we can rip off and steal visually from our client, right? So if you just take 5 seconds, just kind of glance around the screen, and I'm sure you can see some ideas, some thematic ideas that the client provided. And where we landed was like these layers. They call them data slices. They're like little mini islands. And we noticed that those were all over the place. We also looked at it and we realized it was like an illustrative, almost low poly approach, like a cartoon looking approach. So we thought, all right, we're going to use this as the basis of our project. So what we did, we decided, okay, there's 7 people that we had to interview. So we thought, okay, 7 people, there's 7 islands. Gears started going. Like, all right, well, what if we interviewed everybody and then took their sound bites and gave them their own little islands and created a visual story about what they are talking about? So we basically created a visual based on the story that they were telling, okay? And we pitched it, and thankfully they went with it, and then I'm standing here talking to you about it, all right? So let's flip over to cinema, and I will play for you the first thing. So what we'll do, I'm just going to play it down. This is the first shot in the video that won't play, so you can just picture it all nice and rendered. And the reason I chose this project to walk through is because in this 400 frames, which is just the first shot of 7, there's about 15 different Cinema 4D tools just in this one little shot. So we're just going to walk through them one at a time. And we're going to start with the tornado, and we will just follow the path of destruction and pick up all the Cinema 4D tools along the way. Sound good? Give me a thumbs up. Let me know you're still here with me. Fantastic. All right, so we're going to start with, actually, you know what? We're going to start with the island first. So I'm going to open up a new scene file. There we go. All right, so this is the island that we built. You can see it's extremely complicated. That's a terrible joke. So I'm just going to show you just quickly how we did this. How many Cinema 4D users do we have here? Just like show of hands. Is everybody using Cinema? All right, so some people that are and some people that aren't yet, but you all will be. So here's how we made this, this little island. It's nothing complicated, and it's really quick. It starts from a cube, and then we're going to go and we're going to shrink this down to something like that. And then we're going to subdivide it. When I say subdivide, it just means taking the geometry and breaking it down into more pieces. Basically, taking one square, dividing it into 4, dividing that into 4, and so on and so forth, until you get that grid pattern that we're looking at there. I was trying to create the city that was going to be, very grid-like, okay? So not like, old roads, more like, modern grid-style roads. So once we had that, I can't do anything to it yet, right? So look, if I take my mouse, which I was made fun of, by the way, for having the world's oldest mouse, I don't care. I like it. It works. I can't grab this thing. I can move it, but I can't grab the individual polygons or the edge. I can't do that yet. But if I hit the letter C on my keyboard and go like that, actually, you know what? Look up here. See how it has this little, little blue cube? If I hit C, you see how it changes into the triangle with the dots? Now it's editable. Now it's editable polygons. So now I can grab those individual pieces. Up here at the top of the menu bar, does everybody see this? There's like a dot, a line, and a square. Those are the different modes that you can operate in. So here, I'm in point mode. Now you can see, if I zoom in, you can see each of the, all these vertices, all those points. So I could grab one of those and go like that. Why I would do that? No idea. Just showing you that you can do that, right? Now, if you take a point here and another point, and you draw a line in between those, now you have an edge. I can switch over to edge mode up there, and now I can click that edge. And it's going to move the whole edge, but it's also moving the attached, the connected vertices. If I take a couple edges and glue them together, now I have a polygon, right? So I can grab the polygon tool over here. You can also hit the return key on your keyboard and cycle through those modes. And now I can grab a polygon here. You may hear it called a polygon or a face. It's the same thing. And now I can move that polygon up and down. So I'm going to look from the top view. And the way you can do that, in this upper right corner, does everybody see where my mouse is kind of hanging out right there? If I click that box, it's going to put me into the quad view. I can then go to the view I want to view it from, click that same box, and now that comes full screen. Okay? So I'm just going to grab those 4 quadrants that made up the island. Okay? I'll try to do it real fast. Go here. Does anyone care that I'm not making this exact? Okay, cool. We'll just do something like this. I'm holding down Shift when I grab all these different pieces. I can hit Control, hold down Control, and it'll take them away. Shift will add. And we'll make those 4 quadrants like that. Hold down Control to take them away. I can also middle mouse, and that'll put me in the quad view. Put my cursor back over the perspective view, middle mouse, and now that's another way of doing it. And it looks like I missed a couple, so I'll hold down Shift and just grab those so they're all together. Okay. So now from here, I want to just bring them up a little bit to feel like it had a little bit of a curb, or just to kind of, to pull it off of the street level. So you may think, all right, just grab the arrows and pull it up. Nope, that's not going to work. I mean, it does, it's just not the effect I was going for. What I wanted to do was extrude them and pull those pieces up, creating new geometry in the process. So I'll hit the letter D, D for extrude, and then I'll click and drag in the viewport, just like that, okay? And it'll just kind of raise it up off the ground a little bit. I can also, if I don't want to pull it up, you can also go the other way and push it down, okay? So I just pulled it up a little bit just to get it off of the street. And that's it. That's the simple, probably the simplest thing we did in this project. And then we just saved that out a bunch of different times. We built each island as a separate scene file, rendered them out independently, and then in edit we just stitched them all together like it was footage. Okay? So that's how we created the island. Next. I do not want to save changes. No, I do not. All right, next. Let's hit play. Bless you. All right. So we're going to start with the tornado. And the tornado is very, very difficult to build. And I'll show you how. I think, didn't we talk about this? Yeah. The tornado is extremely difficult to build, so I need you to really bear with me here. This gets really complicated. So in the upper left-hand corner, does everybody see this box up here? That's the asset browser. It's all the stuff that Cinema 4D ships with. Models, materials, textures, so much stuff, right? I'm going to click on the asset browser, and then bear with me, it's going to get really tough. I'm going to start typing tornado. And it shows up. I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to drag it into the viewport. There you go. That's how I made the tornado. I know. I tell all my students in class, I was like, if there's a way to cheat, cheat every time. Just don't get caught. Okay? So I'll close out that asset browser, and I'll hit play. And it starts spinning. I haven't done anything. It's just spinning on its own. It comes like that out of the box, right? So, but this is, I see if anybody picks up on this. If I click on the coordinates tab down here in the bottom right corner, let me pause it. P, everybody, P is for position. R is for rotation. S is for scale, right. The rotation has 0, it's just 0. So even if I hit play, nothing's happening. There's no, the rotation isn't moving. So how is that spinning if the rotation is not animated at all, right? So if I open up this null up here, this null object, and open up my tornado, at the bottom there is a time object. And that is generating that animation procedurally, meaning you're getting it for free. So if I click on that time object and go to the parameter, so up in the upper right-hand corner, this is my object manager. Down here in the bottom right is my attributes manager. If I select an object, at the bottom it shows you its attributes. That's how the interface is laid out. Do you see some rotation value now? Down there? Minus 360, which means it's going to spin around 360 degrees based on the time. Yeah, exactly, right? So as time progresses, it will start spinning 360 degrees, okay? There you go. If I go back up to the null object, we have some custom user data that we wired up. And by we, I do not mean me. I did not make this asset. So if I turn this rotation speed down, it's just spinning less over the same amount of time. It's still saying spin 360 degrees, but take a lot longer to do it. You with me on that? Okay. So we'll just leave it here. It doesn't really matter where it is. When we were thinking about how we were going to execute this, another showing my age reference, the first thing I thought of was Twister, but the original one, the good one, where like the cow gets like sucked up into the tornado and like spins around. That was the first thing I thought of when doing this. So I wanted pieces of the environment to get sucked up into the tornado as it approached, and then I wanted to spin around the outside of the tornado. So my thought was, all right, if we already have a tornado spinning, if I just take the object and parent it to it, it'll spin around with it, right? The problem is a tornado has no rotational value. It still says 0. So there's a quick way to fix that. Not fix, but there's a quick way to make it work. If I take this tornado with 0 rotational value, because it's all procedural, which means there's no keyframes, right? If I go to File in the upper left-hand corner, File, Export, and export that as an alembic file, it'll take all that procedural animation and bake it down into keyframes. So now it understands that it's actually spinning, and there's a keyframe for every frame of the entire animation. So if you look back in my original scene file, and I click on tornado, see that? The rotation value, it's like 4,000 something. As it plays, look, you see how that rotation value is moving? So now Cinema understands, oh, I get it, you're spinning around. So now if we attach something to it, it'll spin with it. Everybody with me on that? All right, good. So what we did, I'm going to get out of this camera view. A couple different ways we can do that. If you want to get out of the current camera, you're going to click that little white box right here. Also, if you drag the camera into the viewport, it'll give you this little box here. And if I double click that, I can just jump out of the camera view really quick. Because who really has the time to like move your cursor another 1.5 inches? You know what I mean? You got to take every shortcut you can, right? So now I can, tumble around, and my original shot camera stays where it is. So let me park over here so you can see what's going on. You see these rings? There's 4 splines, these 4 circle splines that are around the tornado. They are parented to the tornado. Does everybody understand what I mean when I say parented? Raise your hand if you know what that means. Okay, for other people, let me explain it to you. Cinema 4D and basically any application has the ability to have parent-child relationships. And the way I used to explain it to my students was, I have kids, and when I go to the grocery store or any store when they were little, I could hold their hand and walk them through the store. I am the parent in that situation. I can walk this direction. I am animated to walk this direction. And if I'm holding my kid's hand, they're coming along for the ride. But what can they also do as I'm dragging them through the store? Pick up stuff, fall on the ground, jump up and down, rotate however they want. They have their own ability to do stuff, but I'm still the parent, I'm dragging them along for the ride, right? So if I parent those splines to the tornado, they'll follow the tornado as the parent, but they can still do their own thing. Does that make sense? So I made a couple of them. 1, 2, 3, there's one for the tree, the light pole, the bench, whatever. And as the tornado gets close, let's take a look at this light pole. This one right here. Let's keep our eye on that light pole. And there's someone watching right now. One of you is going, does he know that park bench is under the ground? I do. Don't pay attention to it. Don't even look at it. There's nothing to see there. Just pay attention to the light pole. As that light pole gets closer, it gets ripped out of the ground and it attaches to the circle spline. Come on, baby. And it starts getting pulled around. Now, the beauty of Cinema 4D is that if I grabbed 3 Cinema 4D, if I told Andy to come over here and rig this up, he would have a different way of doing it. If I grabbed Jonas and said, can you rig, he would have a different way of doing it. There's a million different ways to do the same thing. The way we came up with was an align to spline tag. Does anybody use align to spline tags for anything? So what that does is it says, hey, object, when I tell you to, I want you to snap to that spline and do whatever and do wherever that spline goes, you go, all right? So here's what that looks like. I'm going to make a circle spline, and I'm going to click the plane because right now it's sitting up. I want it to lay flat. So I'm going to just click through these options until it lays flat because I've been using this for 20 years and still cannot remember which of those buttons will lay that thing flat in the ground. So now it's flat in the ground, and I'm going to just animate it to spin around, just with 2 simple keyframes, nothing fancy. So we'll go to frame 0. We're going to click the little diamond, and then we're going to go forward to, frame 90 sounds good. And we'll just drag that around a couple times. If you hold down Shift when you click and drag those, they'll just go a lot faster. Make another keyframe, Go back to the beginning. All right, so now we got some spin, right? So let's just grab anything to make it attach. I'm going to click on my objects. I'll grab a figure and drag it over here to the left, okay? So we have to tell, I'm just pretending that figure is like the light pole or the bench. It could be anything. On the figure itself, I'm going to right click and I'm going to say align to spline, okay? If you don't want to do all the clicking stuff, you can also use Shift-C, which just pulls up all of the stuff. And then I can just start typing align, and it's right there. And I can just click it, hello, and add it to the figure. Now what that's doing is it's saying, there's an empty box down here. It says spline path. It's like asking you a question. It says, what spline would you like to be attached to? And all you have to do is drag that circle down to the spline path. And when I let go, watch what happens. It snaps automatically to the spline. And then if I hit play, you can probably guess what's going to happen. It's now aligned to it. So if that spline is spinning around, that's going to go along for the ride, okay? So there's one other step that we did. I'm going to go over to the spline tag. And in the basic parameters down here, I'm going to turn it off. I'm going to disable it. Let me make sure I'm using the right terminology. I'm going to disable it and move that figure back over there. So as the tornado is approaching, I wanted to have these objects slowly get pulled out of the ground, like it was, kind of fighting, being sucked into this thing. So hand animated to pull it out of the ground, and then just as it gets close, we activate the align to spline tag, so it snaps onto the spline, right? So it's hand animated off the ground, up towards the spline. Once it gets close, we enable it and it snaps to it. Good? And it looks like this. I will go to frame 0 and I'll set a keyframe for the X, for X. And click on that little diamond and you'll see it activate red. It'll light up red. That means there's a keyframe on the current frame. And then we'll go forward to like, I don't know, frame 60. And we'll drag it over here. And set another keyframe just by clicking that diamond. Boom. So from frame 0 to 60, it'll do that. And now on the align to spline tag, I'm going to say also on frame 60, set a keyframe telling the spline tag, you're off. Do not do nothing. Go forward one frame with the letter G on my keyboard, turn the tag on, and then set a keyframe for that. So in one frame, it'll activate and snap. So it looks like this. And snap. Okay? You notice the jump? Watch, it'll jump. Boom. See how it kind of jumped and snapped? So this just took a little trial and error to figure out when it activated, where on the spline it was going to snap to, and then adjust your keyframe animation so it keyframes right up to that point. So when the spline tag turns on, you don't notice that jump. I will not bore you with hand animating this, just telling you how we did it. Okay? All right, let's move on. And we're just going to follow the tornado through the destruction path, and we'll just pick up all the cool stuff along the way. Next, check out the trees. As the tornado gets close, they start getting knocked around left and right, back and forth, okay? Let's take a look at how we did that. There we go. So here's the tree. Nothing crazy going on here. Just a couple spheres. If I add a sphere and I go to the object property in the bottom right corner, I can lower the segments. Voila, low poly tree bush, low poly tree plants, no big deal. Couple of those, just scale them differently, get some variation, you're good to go. So how we animated the trees was with a bend deformer, right? So what the bend deformer does, let me just add an object, I'll show you how we do it. I'll add this cylinder here. And by default, does everybody see the vertical lines that are going around the object? Right here, right there, and right there. Those are the segments. If I increase the height segments, you're going to see it gets crazy overloaded with geometry. If there's 0 segments, right, it can't bend because there's nothing to deform. You can think about it like your arm, right? Your arm has, all these subdivisions, one here, one here, one here. So that gives me the ability to, I did this yesterday and I realized I looked like I was like doing the robot, so I don't want to do that. But if I don't have those joints in there and I try to bend my arm, it's going to be not good, right? So you have to have those subdivisions in order to be able to make stuff bend. So I'm going to add a couple of those, and then I'm going to add a bend deformer. If you click on this object right here on the right-hand side, those are your deformers. They're purple. It's an easy way to remember that, this purple lavender color. If I click and hold, it'll show you all of the deformers. That could be a whole other presentation just on the deformers. So definitely go in there and play around with those. We're going to grab the bend deformer. And we talked a couple minutes ago about the parent-child relationship. The deformer has to be a child. So I'm going to click and drag that. Okay? And now it can affect what's directly above it. So if I go to the object parameter in the bottom right and start playing around with the strength, it'll start bending. And when I first started using 3D a long time ago, it never crossed my mind to use deformers to animate. I always just used them to like shape things and put things in the shapes. I never thought when I was younger to use it for animation. So, and it's awesome. I wish I would have thought about it earlier. So this is just a couple keyframes. Here's how we do that. I went to the beginning, set it to 0. Keyframe, drag it to like, frame 30, whatever. This is just all trial and error. And did that. Make a keyframe. Go back over here. Make it go the other way. Go like that. I'm also going to activate this keep length object. I'm sorry, that checkbox. If you don't keep the length as it bends, it changes the size of it. But if I set it to keep length, it'll just keep the original shape and size of the object. So I had it just do this over time. Just bend and go like that. That's it. No hands. Right? And then I just added a bunch more keyframes. As the tornado went away, I just added more and more keyframes, and I just reduced the amount of bend back and forth. So, 30 degrees, and then like, 20, 20, 10, 10, and I slowed it down. So it felt like it kind of eased into a stop rather than just shutting off. All right? So that's how we animated all the trees. There's a whole bunch of them. I may or may not have just copied and pasted them and rotated them. Maybe I did that. Maybe that was a real lazy way to do it. Clients never knew. So that's how we do that. Next. Where do we go next? We go to the breaking of the building. The tornado hits the building. Here it comes. You all make sound effects when you animate. Don't lie. I know I just did it, but you all do it. You all do. So how do we make this building fall down? Well, we got to break it first. So let me show you how we do that. All right. Make a new scene. Command N. And I'll just make a new building. Okay? And let's make it, I forget how big I made it. Let's see. Make it 800 by 400 by 400. Okay? These are not arbitrary numbers. Show of hands, how many people are working to scale when they're inside of 3D? Tell the truth. Raise your hand if you're working to scale. We're going to have a talk. We're going to have a talk after this about working to scale. So if I add a figure, the default is 180 centimeters, just about 6 feet. There we go. It's very important to work to scale, right? So when you're working, well, there's a million reasons why you want to work to scale. Like, all right, light, right? Light travels a certain distance and falls off a certain way, right? So if you're not working to scale, when you try to render, realistic light values, if it's not to scale, cinema or any package, like, hey, I don't know what you're talking about. Work in real world scale, the light's more predictable. Same thing with like dynamic simulations, which I'm about to show you. It's based on gravity, right? Different size, different mass, that stuff's important, right? So you really want to work to scale. And then another reason, if you're passing files around, this will, oh my God, this drives me crazy. If I'm working with other artists and they don't work to scale, and I'm working on this house, and they bring in a figure and I import it, and instead of being 6 feet, the character's like 100 feet. It's just a pain. If you have 10 different people and they're all working in different scales, it's a nightmare. So please try to remember to work in scale. All right, so let's talk about how we're going to break this. We're going to use the Voronoi fracture. So I'm going to hold down Shift-C to pull up my object, or to pull up my commander here, and type V-O-R-O. There we go. Click and drag it over. And we're going to get very comfortable with this parent-child relationship, all right? Just bake that into your head. All right, so I'm going to add the cube as a child to the fracture object. And you're probably looking at this going, I have no idea what I'm looking at right here. Why did it just change colors? This is why it changed colors. If I go back to the fracture object and click on it and go to sources, one more click, and then I click on the point generator, okay? So I click on the fracture object, then the sources, then the point generator. What do we mean by sources? It's basically saying, what is the source of the breakup? Does that make sense? How are we breaking this up? And I'm using this point generator to break it up. I'm not doing it. That's just how it comes by default. And if I go back to the Object tab, it says Colorize Fragments. If I turn that off, that can be a bit hard to see, especially if you have a ton of those. So the default is to colorize them, just so it's a bit easier to visualize, okay? I'm going to go back to Sources, and by default, at the bottom, the point amount is 20, so it's breaking this up into 20 pieces. I'm just going to click and drag and just go nuts. Now, I'm not going to do that in the presentation. It'll just take longer to operate, but just wanted to show you how that works. By default, the distribution type is uniform, which means it's going to try to space them out evenly around the object. I can change it to normal, which tries to centralize a lot of them, right? Normal's pulling everything in the middle. We have inverse normal. I'm not going to explain what inverse is. It's the opposite, right? I hope we could all follow along with that, right? And then last is a exponential option, which gives you the ability to weight to a certain axis. So I'll show you what that means. If I set them all to off, it looks exactly like the uniform distribution. But if I say positive y, it starts to try to weight more of them towards the bottom, so you get more of them at the bottom. If I say, negative y, it'll flip them towards and put them up top. You can stack them too. You can say, positive x, positive y, and now they'll be on that side, but that towards the bottom, all right? So you can just play around with that as your shot requires. It's going to change it back to uniform. Okay? So I guess all we got to do is hit play and it'll blow apart, right? Right? Wrong. 2 more clicks. Nothing big, 2 more clicks. We're going to click on the Voronoi fracture. We're going to right click and we're going to go to bullet tags, rigid body. Okay? Bullet tag, rigid body. And now when I hit play, it all falls away. So what does that mean? It's responding to, there you go, gravity, right, respond to gravity. But we don't have anything there for it to I don't want to give away what I'm about to say, for it to land on, okay? Land on. So let's just put a flat piece of ground there for it to land on. Make this plane, scale it up huge, something like that. It's going to work now, right? No. Why isn't it working? Because we haven't told the rigid body to collide with anything, right? So it sees the plane, but it doesn't understand that the rigid body is supposed to interact with that and stop it from falling through to the abyss. So if we right-click on the plane and go to bullet tag, I bet you can guess what tag we have to put on there, right? Collider, very good. So now when we hit play, the rigid body is going to work. There we go. It starts to fall, it hits on the ground, and that's colliding. The rigid body collides with the ground. Okay? So that's a crash course in how to use the fracture object. Where are we going next? Let's follow the path of destruction here. Where are we heading next? Oh, I think I know. To the welcome sign. So as the tornado approaches, got the trees, got the building flying, there we go. And now we have our welcome banner flying away, right? We used a cloth object to do that, okay? So I'll show you how we did that. Click on that. And I'm just going to copy and paste it into a new scene. Come on, where are you? There we go. Okay. All right, so on that banner, there's nothing to this. This is just a plane that I just stretched out, in the shape and the size of the banner. Nothing complicated about that at all, just a simple plane stretched out. But what I want you to notice is this cloth tag all the way to the right. I hope you're starting to pick up on a pattern that most of the stuff that we do in cinema lives in these tags that live right next to each object, which is nice. You're not like digging through menu after menu to find something. Everything's usually accessible right there in the object manager. And let's take a look at what we animated. A couple things. The wind direction and the wind strength and the turbulence. A handful of things. It's not complicated. So what do we mean by wind direction X? We mean that when I activate the strength of the wind, we want to blow it in that direction, okay? Then the wind direction Y, 10 centimeters. I mean, it's going to lift it up. So I have negative X, positive Y, and then wind direction Z. So I'm telling it to go 3 different directions: up, over, and out, okay? And then we talked earlier about setting keyframes with those little red diamonds. If you look next to the wind strength, you can see that it's red. What that means is that that particular parameter has animation on the track somewhere, okay? If I go to frame, you'll start to see it takes off. So what we did is we set the wind strength to 0. And as the tornado approached, we simply animated the wind strength to go from 0 to 8. That's it. So over these frames here, it goes from 0 to 8 in terms of strength, and then it follows the direction that I set prior. Are we good? Does that make sense? Everybody following that? So nothing crazy. It was one parameter, just the strength to blow it away. Nothing crazy. All right, next. We're going to jump over to the firehouse. All right, let's hit play and see what happens with the firehouse. Oh, the garage door, yeah, the garage door looking thing opens up. How do we do that? Okay. Let's talk about another Cinema 4D tool. The spline wrap. I don't know why I said that so dramatically, but spline wrap. I'm going to turn off the firehouse just so we can see what's going on in the scene. Hold down Option and double click the 2 little stoplights next to the fire station. See those little 2 circles? Hold down Option and double click, and it sets them both to red, which is just turns it off. It turns it off for the render and for the visibility together. And you know what? I'll turn off the door as well. And you can see this super complicated spline that I made. And the way we did that, we just grab our pen tool, and I'll do it from the side view. And we'll just click at the bottom, another click here, click and drag like you would, Photoshop or Illustrator or whatever. And now I made that spline. Nothing complicated. It's the profile, right? So as the door is going to come up and it's going to follow the path of that spline. Okay? So let me turn everything back on. Let's turn the door back on. The spline wrap is right here, and it's going to live under a null object with the door. So the door and the spline together at the same hierarchy level live in a null object. The spline wrap is very similar to the align to spline tag, meaning if I click on the spline wrap over here, it's going to say, hey, what spline do you want me to wrap onto? And all I did was drag this spline right down there into that box, and it snaps right to it. So what we ended up animating was one parameter, the offset. That's it. And I'll show you here, I can just override it and just do it. Watch. This. And then it just follows the path. It just follows the spline. Offset, right? You're offsetting if the door is here on the spline or here. You're just sliding it and offsetting it up and down on the spline, okay? Two things to keep an eye out for. Down at the bottom here where it says mode and end mode. The mode right now is set to keep length, meaning this is kind of like the bend deformer. It's keeping the original length of the door. If I change it to fit spline, so everybody see how it lengthened it, it's stretched out to be the full length of the spline. Watch, one more time. There's the original door, that's fit spline. That will change on every project, every shot, depending on what you're trying to achieve. So let's keep it to keep length. Then the other one was end mode. It's set to clamp. You can also set it to extend. If I set it to extend, when it gets to the end of the spline, it's just going to keep going. Like this. For this particular shot, that wasn't what I wanted. So change the clamp, and now when it gets to the top, it just kind of disappears into the ground or up to the ceiling. Thumbs up? Good to move on? Cool. Spline wrap. Don't want to save that. Oh, let's go to the ambulance. This was fun. This was cool. All right, we got a couple minutes left. So let's open up a new scene. Where are you, ambulance? Here we go. This is cool because we're going to do 3 layers of animation on a single object. Remember the align to spline tag we talked about at the beginning for the tornado to attach the object onto the spline? It's exactly what we did here for the ambulance. We put an align to spline tag on the ambulance and then told it to go from 0 to 100%, right? If you're wondering why my position says 100 and not 0, the direction of the spline is just reversed. So instead of going from 0 to 100, I'm going from 100 to 0. Same end result. So at the beginning, it's set to 100%, so the ambulance at the beginning, and then over time, it goes to, oh, I didn't set it all the way. Oh, I stopped it at 18. I didn't realize that. I always thought it went from 100 to 0. So it stopped right here. So 2 keyframes, one at the beginning and one at the end. So that's the first level of animation, okay? Now, I want everyone to take a look in the upper right corner in the object manager, because if you notice, the align to spline tag is not on the ambulance itself. Does everybody see that? It's on a null directly above it. It's on the ambulance null. I'll just call it that. Ambulance null object. Any guesses why the align to spline tag is on a null above it and not on the actual object? I'll tell you. If you put the align to spline on the object itself, it can't do anything else except be attached to that spline, okay? So it limits you in what you can do on top of that, like in a second level of animation. So here's what I mean. If I try to grab this ambulance, right? I can't really do anything if I grab it on the null level, because that null is locked, it's stuck on that spline. But doing it this way, I can grab the ambulance itself one level down, and now I can move that around. And this is where I'm going to get my second level of animation. So we're going to turn this ambulance shot into like an action movie. So instead of taking this, leisurely ride like this, once it gets around the corner, we're going to make it go up on 2 wheels for the worst ambulance ride experience ever. So right around here, we're going to have it go up on these 2 wheels. If I go to the ambulance, see, now I have the ability to animate that independently. So just think about it like layers, right? The first layer, it's aligning to the spline. The second layer, we're going to hand animate it to go up on 2 wheels. We're going to do one more, but right now it's stuck on that second layer. So right around here, right there, You can feel free to make sound effects for me if you want. Just do it loud so everybody can hear it. And maybe we'll give away a free prize if you like do sound effects for the animation. All right, so right here, we're going to make up on 2 wheels. So a keyframe here for the bank. Make it go around here and right there. Now you know what? We're going to go back a little bit. Right there, we're going to make it go up on 2 wheels, like that. And then as it goes further along, we'll eventually make it settle back down to 0. All right, here we go. What's that look like? Oh my, can you imagine being in the back of that ambulance going up on 2 wheels? There you go. So that's 2 layers of animation, the same object. Let's add a 3rd layer. Let's go to, well, we'll go to the ambulance. And we're going to add a 3rd layer, which is going to just be some random jitter. Some vertical, bouncing around, like it's bouncing around on cobblestone or something. That'll be our 3rd layer of animation. I'm going to right-click on the ambulance, and I'm going to add an espresso tag. Okay. Does anyone use espresso for things in Cinema 4D? One hand, one hand, one hand? Okay. You're off camera, so I'm just going to say everybody had their hands up. Great, we're all using this. This is exciting. It's like, just think about it as like a blank canvas. Anything you drag from your object manager into the espresso window, you can modify manually. It's a working area, it's a canvas. So I'm going to drag my ambulance down into the espresso window, and there we go. And it's like plumbing, right? The blue is the input, the red is the output. So it's like a driver and a driven relationship. So you could say, hey, this object can affect this object if I plug them together. This can drive this. This can control this. Well, what do I want to control the ambulance? How do you make random values? What can you use? What can we use to create randomness, to create random values? Anyone just yell it out? Noise. That's right. We're going to use a noise object. So I'm going to click this little magnifying glass here, and we'll type noise, and that comes up. Now what noise is going to do, it's going to generate random values on every frame. So as it's playing, it's going to give you a random value. If I take the noise output right here, say, okay, noise, you affect the ambulance. And click and drag it to the input of the ambulance, which is the blue, and let go. It says, all right, what parameter, what property of the ambulance do you want to affect? And if I want it to bounce around up and down as it goes, I want to plug it into the position Y. Very good. Coordinates, transform, position, Y. And now we'll hit play. And, oh, you know what we're going to do? We're actually going to go over here so we can watch it before it takes off. Nothing's happening yet, right? So we have to just modify a couple things on the noise object. Not much, just a couple clicks. I'm going to select the noise object in my espresso window, and now I have some options up here. We're going to do 3 clicks. 3? Yeah, 3 clicks. We're going to change the noise from noise to turbulence, which is now going to give us the randomness over time. We're going to change the frequency and the amplitude. Frequency is how often it'll happen. Amount is the value of the change. So let's just click and drag and see what happens. Let's change the amplitude up to 100. I like round numbers. How many people, when you're working, if you set it to like 102, will go back and set it to 100? Show of hands. How many people need to work like, yeah, all of you. Very good. I'm not the only crazy one. So I'll set it to 100, and then we'll see what happens. Okay. That's obviously way too much, right? So let's take that amplitude down to like 50. I have a tendency to cut things half, to cut values in half or double them as I'm working to figure out the right value. Somebody taught me that a long time ago, and it's just stuck with me ever since. Double values or cut them in half until you get where you want to be. Right. All right, so that's 50. I still think that's too much, so we'll go to 25. Not 250, 25. There we go. But it still feels a little slow. We want this to be like high frequency noise, like a jitter, right? So let's take this frequency and take it way up. This is the worst ambulance ride ever. I cannot imagine being in the back of this thing. The frequency feels right, but we'll cut the amplitude down to like 5. And let's zoom in to see. That may be too big too. But you get the idea. We could play around with this all day. I'm not going to bore you with that. The point of this is now we have 3 levels of animation. We have the align to spline tag. That's getting us from point A to point B with 2 keyframes. We have the hand animation going up on the 2 wheels. And then with the 3rd level of animation of the jitter, right? Why do we work like this? Why do we work in layers of animation and not just make everything on one track? Why do we do that, right? I think I lied to you when I said I want the takeaway to be, make something out of nothing and that cinema can do everything. That's still true. But I think another takeaway I really want everyone to take is that you really want to make yourself art directable. If you're working for clients, that just means you're working for opinions, right? And usually a lot of them. And those opinions will be there up until the day you deliver that project. So if you can figure out a way to work in layers, you have the ability to modify specific notes that come in from a client without backing yourself into a corner. So let's say, for example, the client loves the path, they love the 2 wheels, but they don't like the amount that it's jittering. You can just change that one element and not have to go back and break everything. So try not to animate and work in the house of cards. See if you can figure out ways of making yourself art directable up until the day you deliver. And often after you deliver, because sometimes notes come back a week later, a month later, a year later. They revisit a project and say, hey, remember that project from a year ago? Can we make some tweaks? So try to make yourselves have some systems so you can work that way. Much, much better. Great. And I think we have time for one last quick thing, hopefully. We're working quick, we're working fast. I have 90 seconds. Let's see if we can do this. All right, the last thing I want to show you, going quick. Okay. I wasn't able to show you this just because it didn't play, but in the second shot after that city island, we have a river, this low poly illustrated river. So I just want to show you how we did that. And look, I'm not trying to teach you how to make a low poly river. I just want you to understand conceptually, theoretically, how this stuff works so you can apply it to any shot, any project that you have. And hey, if you happen to make a low poly river, hey, more power to you. So I'm going to really quickly do this, 60 seconds, come on. I'm going to make a plane. I'm going to drag it out. There we go, something like that. We're going to crank up the subdivisions. Why? So it can deform, very good. And we need to add some randomness to this. Now, when I first started in 3D a long time ago in cinema, I never thought about using effectors for this type of work, for deforming objects. I always thought it was just for MoGraph. Alas, it's not. So I'm going to grab a random effector, 30 seconds. This feels like one of those cooking shows where you have to get everything done. So I'm going to add a random effector and I'm going to add it to the plane. If I click the random effector over here and I go to deformer, by default it's turned off, which means it's not affecting the geometry at all. If I change it to polygon, there we go. Now it's affecting each individual polygon. If I go back to the effector, change it from random mode to turbulence, like we did a couple seconds ago with the noise, and hit play, now you get more free animation. I hope you're picking up on a trend here. Free animation, cheating, not doing a whole lot of manual labor. Nobody's got time for that. And the last thing I'll show you, 2 seconds. The problem we ran into was as it starts animating all the way on the right, it was pulling away from the shoreline. So we didn't want it to animate all the way to the right. We wanted it to stick to the beach, to the shoreline. So if you go into the random effector and click on the fields over here, I can add a box field, not a capsule field, a box field. Stretch that way out. And now what that does, if I add our water to it, you'll see, it's only going to affect what's inside of that field. I'll just make it really crazy so you can see. And then what we did is we dragged the field over as far away to the right as we could, but still keeping that sharp edge. And on that, okay, I think that's it. Yeah, all right, anyway, that's it. Took it right up to the edge. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Hope you learned something from that. Thank you very much. Go make some low poly stuff.